remember her being really involved and full of life and joy and energy. And she really blessed us with a really beautiful childhood in spite of the fact that I'm sure she felt really terrible a lot of the time. She was an amazing fighter and an amazing mom.
Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. Discover yourself, break out of mediocrity, and become the mom you've always aspired to be. Here's your host, Kirsten Tyrell.
Hey, Marvelous Moms. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm chatting with Rachel Nielson, who I actually connected with because I reached out to the podcast Power of Moms, and I was really excited to get to know their community a little bit better. And Rachel contacted me and has a very interesting story to tell. This is going to be a little bit of a different twist on Marvelous Moms Club because we're going to be chatting about her mother, who was an amazing woman and such an example of love and compassion and just strength and, oh my gosh, all the good descriptive words that she deserves to hold. And so welcome, Rachel, to the podcast. I'm excited to share about your wonderful mother.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk about her.
Well, I know I've heard from other people who have lost loved ones that the best way to remember them or the best way to be comforted is to talk about them and to share stories, just to hear their name and to keep them alive in spirit through their stories. So
absolutely. I feel like, so my mom passed away 13 years ago, so many people in my current life never met my mom, including my husband never met my mom.
Aww.
And so to be able to talk about her and share her, it's like giving people the chance to meet her. And It's just such a gift and a blessing. So thank you for letting me talk about her tonight.
Bet. Oh, well, after that, how could I not? Like, I'm excited because I think I read your blog post that you actually wrote over there. And it's just so amazing because I think all of us would hope that if we were faced with cancer or something, I mean, just the day-to-day grind of motherhood, you probably know, is so hard and taxing that it's hard to keep a smile on your face. Like tonight, my kids wanted to wrestle, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is Dad's job. I just want to sit here and veg. But yes. I think in my mind, like, but I might not have another opportunity for this. You just never know what tomorrow brings. And I would never want them to grow up and regret looking back on that day when I just couldn't muster the energy. So I don't know, if you want to like share her story with everybody.
Yes, I would love
to. Go ahead.
to.
Let's hear it.
So my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 6. So she was only 35, which is super young. And she had an 8-year-old, me, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So she had these 3 little girls when she was diagnosed. And her cancer was quite serious even at the time that they found it. So she had to go through aggressive chemotherapy, and she had a bone marrow transplant. She was in the hospital for 3 months when we were little. And then she went in and out of remission for 13 years, and she passed away when I was 19. So she really fought a good fight, and she said from the beginning that she really felt that she prayed and felt peace that she would have the chance to raise her daughters, and that she just needed to fight to do that. Mm-hmm. And then the night before she died, we kind of had a little family meeting, and she said, like, I feel like I've done that. I've given you everything that I can, and if I have to go, then I have to go, you know. So I think she wasn't at peace with leaving, in that she didn't want to leave us, and yet she did feel at peace with her role as a mother, and that she had done the best that she could, and that we were raised, even though we were only 21 and 19 and 16 when she died, we were raised to the point that she felt like she could go. And so she really was just so inspiring. And I think when people hear that my mom was so sick for 13 years, they think she must have been an invalid and I must have had a really sad childhood, and that is not the case at all. Even though she was so sick, even when she didn't have cancer, she usually had some, because she had no immune system, because she'd gone through chemotherapy so much. Even when her cancer was in remission, she always had some weird medical health problems going on. And yet I don't remember my childhood being sad or my mom being an invalid. I remember her being really involved and full of life and joy and energy. And she really blessed us with a really beautiful childhood in spite of the fact that I'm sure she felt really terrible a lot of the time. She was an amazing fighter and an amazing mom.
Wow.
So
That is amazing. That really is 13 years to go through
yes,
such, oh, that's a long time to really deal with, like, pain and suffering and everything that comes along with it. Even like you said, being in the remission and still struggling with other things. Most
yes,
people, I think, without that motivation of her daughters, most people would have quit
yeah.
long before 13 years.
Yes, and I do feel like now that I am a mother myself, I have an even greater appreciation for what it must have been like for her. There are so many times when I'm worn out at the end of the day, and I'm healthy, but just being a mom is so hard. And I think, how did she do this? And I sort of wish I could go back in time and like help her more. But I was just a little girl, and we did help as much as we could. But I'm like, how did she manage the daily grind, even with all of
Yeah.
her health problems? But I do feel like you said at the beginning of the podcast, where you want to appreciate the normal times and wrestling with your kids. And I do feel like her illness gave her that perspective that life is a gift. And so she really appreciated normal. She was in the hospital for 3 months. And I think about that sometimes when I'm like, I don't want to make another dinner and I don't want to sweep and I'm like, my mom probably would have given anything during those 3 months to just go home and make dinner and
Yeah.
clean the kitchen and put her kids to bed, so that I feel like her experience has really helped give me perspective as a young mom. I so wish that I could talk to her about being a mother, which I never really got the chance to, but I think so often of her example and kind of derive meaning from what she did. And I can sort of figure out what advice she would have given me about
Yeah.
motherhood and making the most of every day. And so she continues to be an inspiration, and her story continues to be an inspiration to me, even though she's been gone now for 13 years. So
That's so cool. And I think a lot of times that's what people say is if something were to happen, you wouldn't miss all the big things. I don't know if you read very often or if you've read any Brené Brown books, but she talks about that. Like at the end of your life, you're not regretting not doing bigger things. You're regretting the normal. You're regretting the small, or you're
yeah,
wishing for more of that. You're wishing for like I said, like the moments of just playing with your kids on the floor. When they're
yeah,
grown, you're going to miss that so much. It's going to hurt. And
yeah.
that's
And I
so
feel
cool
like,
that you can keep the perspective of we didn't get to have these long conversations about what I should do in this scenario as a mother, but you can go back, like you said, and derive what she would probably say based on how she performed, not even as a mother, but just as a human being and the inspiration that she was to you while you were young and impressionable.
yeah, definitely. And I do feel like she was such a model of that just doing the daily is enough, and that really is marvelous and amazing. I feel like now we live in a time where we feel this pressure to do all the extra stuff as women and start organizations and run marathons or do all these big huge things, which so many women do, and I think it's awesome if they do that. But my mom couldn't do anything extra, so she really just all she could do was be a mom and get through the day, and that was enough. She lived an amazing life. And so sometimes I feel like when I feel like I'm not enough, I'm like, just being an ordinary mom is an amazing thing too.
Yeah.
And taking from her example to not sort of sweat the small stuff or get caught up in the more superficial things, and just doing the bare minimum to the best of your ability is enough.
Yeah.
So I think about that too.
That's so great. And that's actually, I did an interview this morning, and I don't know how close you guys will air to each other, but that was something that the girl I interviewed felt for herself. Like she had a different kind of mom guilt to where she feels guilty just wanting to be a mom and not like really wanting to pursue all the other things that you feel pressure to. And nobody's like, pushing you to the edge and saying you have to do some kind of business from home. I think it's kind of a trendy thing to do. It's something people are finding a lot of fulfillment doing. But when you look at it in those terms, like your mom gave you nothing but herself. She didn't provide this like huge business to leave to you. She didn't go out of the home to do anything extraordinary. But what she did in the home and what she did for you guys was more extraordinary than anything else that she could have ever done. So if you turned out great and you have this amazing role model, then why would you feel like you needed to go out and conquer every single aspect of the world? When really the world that exists in your home is the most important world that you could conquer.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't just us in our home. I feel like she really reached out and made a difference to neighbors and
Wow.
family and people close to us. But again,
Yeah.
it wasn't this broader world community, but it doesn't need to be.
Right.
I feel like after she passed away, I got to hear about all these things that I never knew she was doing because people would tell me, oh, your mom always remembered my birthday, or the time that she came over and helped me plant flowers, and just these
Oh.
things, which is such a gift. And I feel like if anybody listening has somebody who they love who's lost someone that they love, one of the best gifts you can give them is just to share your memories of that
Mm-hmm.
person because it's like getting new memories. For me, I felt like I learned all these things about my mom. People told me about how she was at book clubs and she was so insightful and she had this great insight into the books, and I never knew that side of my mom. And
Wow.
I was a high school English teacher and now I'm home with my kids, but I never knew that my mom and I sort of shared that passion. And so to get that memory was so cool that somebody
Yeah.
shared that with me. And just recently, a friend wrote me a letter and talked about her memories of my mom. And she's one of the few friends I have who knew my mom
Mm-hmm.
now at this stage. She was one of my college roommates. So she was on my college dorm hall. And my mom passed away right after my freshman year of college. So
Wow.
she's really one of the last who knew my mom, and she shared memories of my mom and memories of how my mom interacted with me. And that was so precious to
Wow.
hear about. She said, I remember your mom calling you and talking to you about your assignments. And when she came to see you at college, she wanted to take us all out to dinner because that was your life. And she wanted to know your life. And that
Mm-hmm.
included your friends. And that was such a fun remembrance because that is something that was so core to who my mom was she always invited our friends into the home and loved our friends. And, even when we were growing up, they were around so much and she got to know them so well that if they were there, she would say, Liz, set the table. Meg, help me do this or that, and just kind of put us all to work. And we
Mm-hmm.
loved it because that it made you feel like one of her daughters, to
Mm-hmm.
these friends of ours. And when my best friend graduated from high school at the graduation ceremony, I remember my mom hugging her and saying, you've been driving me nuts since the seventh grade. Just like one of her girls. And I just thought that's something I would really love to emulate that my mom did so well, is to really love my children's friends and get to
Mm-hmm.
know them and be a
Yeah.
part of their lives in that way. So just continuing to get those new memories of her through the eyes of other people is so priceless and special.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And I think that's really good advice for anybody out there who does know somebody who's lost someone, because I can even see that. And I haven't lost my parents, but I love hearing from other people. Like, your parents are just these like people that you only know as your mom and dad. So
Yeah.
to hear the stories of who they are almost helps you identify too with pieces of yourself, like learning that she was so insightful with books. Maybe you see, oh gosh, that's where that core like desire for English literature or whatever comes from.
Right.
This comes from my mother, and those are things that if people didn't share, you wouldn't necessarily know because she's
Yeah.
not around to say, oh, you get that from me.
Definitely.
So that's amazing, and I think that's so insightful and so beautiful to still have those opportunities, because it would be hard when your current life, the people in your life don't know your mother and don't know who she was, but you have those opportunities to still compile those memories and be able to share them with your children too as they get older.
Yeah. And I've really tried hard to do that. I love to write. And so after my mom passed away, I wrote a couple of children's books, just like self-published. That was even back before there was Blurb, there was no online services back then.
Yeah.
So I just like wrote these little children's books and laminated them and bound them at Kinko's, but,
Cute.
and copied them for my sisters. And so we all have these, I call them the Grandma Sally adventures. And
Oh,
they're stories of my mom's life, but written in a children's book format. So we can read them to our kids and they can get to know my mom through those.
that's amazing.
And we really try to remember her and celebrate. We talk about her birthday. Her name was Sally. So we do a Sallybration on her birthday.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's
and
so
we'll like
cool.
do different things each year, but we might share memories of her or, write messages on balloons and release them. Just different things so our kids know about her. And she did some really cool things before she passed away too. She made each of us a baby blanket because she knew she would never meet her grandkids. And that is still my son's favorite blanket.
Oh,
It's just like a little clover shaped blanket. It's not even really a quilt, but just this little clover-shaped blanket, and it has embroidered on the bottom with "Love, Grandma Sally." And he
Oh,
loves that blanket, and he knows it comes from her. And so it's just so special that she tried to do a few things so that we'd have permanent reminders of her.
mm-hmm.
When she very first went into the hospital when I was 6, she recorded a lot of our favorite children's books on cassette tapes, and we would listen to those at night. So it was like she was reading us a bedtime story.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that. And she also recorded for us then her advice for us for our 13th birthdays, because she didn't know if she would be
Right.
around then. And so talking to us about the teenage years and marriage and, dating and all those things that we would face, and her hopes for us and dreams for us. And she was still living on our 13th birthdays, but she gave those to us then. And that was so special to listen to. And so she just did some really special things, so that we can have these permanent reminders of her. And then my sisters and I and my dad have tried to continue doing some of those things. Even though she's been gone for 13 years now, we try to keep her very much a part of our family.
Wow. And you also have taken a cue from that too. I know when you wrote me, you said that you journal, blog, and you write love letters to your children,
Yes,
which
I
is
do.
so cool.
Yeah, so my mom actually was not a journaler, was not a writer or a journaler, and I am kind of obsessive about it, and I don't know if that's because I wish she would have written
Mm-hmm.
more of like her thoughts as a young mom and her thoughts, all these things. I would love to go back and read it. And so I write a lot. I journal a lot and try to capture those thoughts and feelings. Obviously, I hope that I will still be living and when my kids are young mothers and or young parents and things. But regardless, I think you sort of forget. Like when I'm a grandma, I'll probably forget what it's like to be a young mom
Mm-hmm.
somewhat.
Oh
And it'll
yeah.
be good to be able to look back at my journal or to say to my kids, just read this, this
Mm-hmm.
is what it was like for me. And um, so yeah, I journal, and then I do my favorite thing to write is love letters to my kids, which sounds crazy, but it's just like the most raw, honest feelings that I have for them. And my son is adopted. So for all the years before he was born, when we were waiting for him, doing infertility treatments, and then the adoption process, I wrote letters to him. Obviously, I didn't know it was him, but to
Mm-hmm.
our baby. And that was a really special way to sort of process what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have those. And then since he was born, and then I have since conceived a baby through IVF. So we have these two little miracle babies. I've tried to write letters to them occasionally. Like it's usually on their birthdays, on
Yeah.
Valentine's Day. I'll just write what I love about them and what I love about being their mom. And it's probably my favorite thing I ever write are these letters to my kids.
That's really inspiring to me. Something that I want to do because my 6.5-year-old, actually loves writing letters to me. Like anytime he gets in trouble, he goes in his room and he writes me a little note, like to say I'm sorry. And he just loves that. Like he loves giving me letters, even though he doesn't write these long, drawn out letters yet. I know that that's something he would find valuable. So even like I know that you'll give them to them eventually. They're not reading yet. But
Yes.
for my kids, like my older one could start reading those. And I mean, the letters in their lunchbox and stuff. But those, I think doing something longer where it's really just you take the time to focus and be quiet and think about your actual long, beautiful feelings for them. Not long, but, like thinking deeper than just like, you're so funny and you keep me, on my toes. Just really, every mother could go so deep into the reasons that she loves her child.
Yeah.
So that's a really good idea. I really love that.
And I feel like it's even more for me. It often turns into more than just my feelings for them. It's like it's a deeper things. Like I wrote a letter to my son on his second birthday, talking about God's timing and how I had wanted this baby for all these years, but I didn't want just any baby. I mean, I needed Noah.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned to trust God's timing. And so my letter to him was about that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about him, but it's also about these deeper life issues and things that
Yeah.
I'm grappling with. And hopefully he'll read those someday and not only realize how much his mom loved him, but also gain some insights into life
And who you are. And
lessons and
yeah,
what I learned waiting for him and parenting him and all these things.
that's
So,
so great.
and another thing that I do is I write letters to my mom. So I guess I am a letter writer. But
Yeah.
On Mother's Day every year, I write a letter to my mom, and I started that the second year after she passed away, and I've written one every year since. And it kind of is like a recap of my year. I tell her about my year and kind of what I've gone through and what I've learned and what I've been thinking about her. And just so this year I wrote my 12th letter and I have them all in a binder, and I was kind of reading through them and I thought, this is going to be my autobiography someday, these letters to my mom once a year. So that's another thing that I would recommend to people who've lost a loved one or a parent, especially, to have a time when you write a letter to them or record your feelings about them that's set, because it's kind of a trigger for me. Like every Mother's Day, I write this letter, so it doesn't
Yeah.
get lost. I don't forget to do it. It's sort of become this tradition that I think will be a really special thing for me someday, and hopefully for my kids and maybe even their kids,
Yeah.
so be something I can pass on.
Yeah, there's something really important about that. And sadly, because of the digital age, the written word is becoming so much less. I don't know. People aren't doing it as much. Like, I don't know if you're keeping a digital journal or if you're actually sitting down and writing it out. But I was in church on Sunday and somebody said, like, the form of writing, if she could find letters written or just even like notes or thoughts or journals entries written by her mother or her grandmother, I can't remember, that would be so much more valuable to her than just picking up a typed piece of paper, because it's personal and it's so sweet and it's just part of them and it's part of, I don't know, like there's something so beautiful about that. And
About the handwriting and everything. And
yeah.
I agree, because I love seeing my mom's handwriting,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't see it very often anymore. So when I come across something with her handwriting on it, I immediately recognize that handwriting,
Yeah.
and it does touch my heart. And I feel like I am such an avid journaler. I actually wrote a whole article on Power of Moms about how to journal as a busy mom. And one of the things I mentioned in that is I do type my journals because it's so much faster for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that I do it is I type my journals and I print it out at the end of the month. And it's usually just like 1 or 2 pages. It's not, a ton.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be more depending on if I'm going through something really hard or exciting, but it's a few pages of type journaling. And then behind that, I put anything having to do with, so like a note from my son from that month, or something that a love note that I wrote to my husband, I'll stick in there. Just any sort of mementos from that month. So I feel like,
That's
yeah, it's
cool.
typed. My journals are typed, but there's also my handwriting in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, we all kind of have a shoebox that we stick like special notes in, but it's kind of all mixed together. Whereas with this system, it's in order, it's in
Mm-hmm.
context. So if anybody were to come across that note, they would know kind of what it's referring to based
Yeah.
on my journals. So
That's a good
that's an
idea.
idea I have for any moms that want to journal. It is so much faster to do it digitally, and that's okay. But then
Yeah.
also include some of these handwritten mementos and things in there.
Right. Yeah. If writing it out is going to keep you from doing it at all, then do whatever it takes to get the memories out there. But I
Yeah,
think that's cool. Still having something with a personal touch on there that's a really good combination to kind of
yeah,
combine convenience with something really special. So
yeah. And a friend of mine just mentioned that she does hers on like a Google Doc or something, so that if she's ever just like sitting in a doctor's waiting room,
yeah.
we all have those times when we're just stuck somewhere sitting. She pulls up her phone and she'll just journal for a few minutes, just type a few, memories of her kids or whatever. And that's how she keeps her journal. And I thought that was pretty brilliant. So
Yeah. That is
do
a good
something like
idea.
that. Another thing is, I mean, I'm talking to a podcaster. You could do stuff audio too.
Yes.
You could record voice memos that are audio journaling or messages that you could compile for your children. So there's so many options of ways to just record your thoughts and the memories that are important to you as a
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great takeaway just from everything that we've talked about. Like, time is fragile and you just never know. Like, we don't know. We don't know our timeline. And I feel like that's been really prevalent lately in the podcast episodes I've been doing and people I've been chatting with. I'm just like, not in a doomsday way, but in like it's causing me to really reflect on the way I'm choosing to spend my time and if I'm really giving that 100% devotion and if I'm being careful about like what the future is going to hold. And I think time slips away really fast. We take thousands of pictures on our phones. What do we do with them? You know, like we have all these memories we think we're never going to forget. But when you were saying, you'll probably forget things, I remember asking my mom when I was like a newlywed certain questions, or asking when I was pregnant if she remembered. She's like, I just don't remember. And I thought it was so absurd. I'm like, how do you not remember? It wasn't that long ago. And now as a mom, and I have 3 kids, I don't remember certain things about the first one. I'm like, I don't know when he started to talk. I don't know, you know? So it's still, it's so great to keep all of that charted somewhere, to write those memories down, to have something to refer back to. And even just for yourself, like I was really good at blogging for a few years, just a family blog. And when I can go back to those episodes, I'm like instantly back in that moment. So if we can do that always, I mean, it seems silly not to take some time every day to write down just a few thoughts or a few memories of the day.
And it doesn't have to be every day either. I think people get overwhelmed by that, you know, and when they hear I'm an avid journaler, they think, oh, every single day. No, sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes it's not even that. But I feel like my life is very well chronicled just by journaling every so often and kind of having a system for it. Another idea is just a gratitude journal. That can be really a fast, easy one thought from every day, you know, that a moment you were grateful for. That could be a really quick thing. So I would say to moms, don't let it overwhelm you. If like it doesn't have to be every day, but try to do something. Try to write something for your kids that they can have when they're older.
Yeah, so. That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about kind of, not a day in the life, but what you're doing over with Power of Moms and how you kind of got involved over there and what you do for yourself. Because even though I know you're striving to stay present in your kid's life, you still have some other stuff going on. You're not working full time by any means, but just kind of tell us what you're up to.
So I started with Power of Moms when my son was a newborn. He was really colicky, and here I had waited all these years for this baby, and he never stopped crying. And I was like, I don't even like motherhood, and I wanted to be a mother so much, and so that was a hard, dark time. And I came across an article somebody just shared on Facebook called "Your Children Want You," and by April Perry, who's one of the founders of Power of Moms. And I read it, and it just totally spoke to me and gave me hope as a mom that I could do this. It would be worth it. So I just kind of started clicking around the website and saw that there were opportunities to submit writing. So that was really exciting. So I started writing a few things and submitting them, and then got involved and became an editor there. So it was a way to sort of use the skills that I had loved as a high school English teacher while I was home with my son. And I've just sort of progressively gotten more and more involved there. And I do a variety of things now with writing and editing. And I've done several podcasts with them. And now I'm sort of their liaison with the Deseret News in Utah, with a newspaper there, and sort of get their content to them. So I do a lot of different things with Power of Moms, but it's been amazing how it's grown. And even just the other day, my husband said, would you have ever thought when you wrote your first article for Power of Moms that you would end up being so involved and that these people would be such good friends? You're good friends. And I thought, no, never. And isn't that so true, and gives so much hope that sometimes you can't see the end from the beginning when you get involved with things. And if you just start and do something small, you never know how it's going to grow and how it's going to impact your life. And Power of Moms has been a huge blessing to me. And I love the work that I do with them, and that I have a place where I can submit writing and be involved with these great women. So I would really encourage everyone who's listening to check out Power of Moms. It's a website, and then they also have a podcast, Power of Moms Radio, that they air once a week. And it's just really uplifting hope for mothers, encouragement for mothers. It's community. So
I love
people
it.
can check it out.
That is so amazing. I feel like the same fruits came from doing Marvelous Moms Club. I started it just because I was interested in podcasting and had no idea kind of what I was stumbling upon and how much of a need there was for that community, and you just never know who's going to need what you have to offer. And so there's articles I'm sure you've written that if you hadn't put yourself out there to do that, people wouldn't be benefiting from your words and they wouldn't be learning from your experiences. Even the article you posted about your mother, like that's inspiring and that gives so much hope to other people. So I think it's so cool what you said. Like there's tons of people I know now from putting myself out there and social media, which is crazy. Social media used to seem so evil to me because it was like everybody's just putting stuff on Instagram and it's so intimidating and overwhelming. Whereas now, like, they're some of my best friends and I've met them through Periscope, through live streaming and through doing this podcast. And it's amazing. So I'm so happy you have that community. And I think it's a really great community. I think it's a really good podcast. And obviously that's why I reached out. I just think it's fantastic. And I think what you do over there and what everybody else does over there is so great. So way to represent.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad you can put your skills to good use. I think that's the coolest part about the day and age we're living in right now. Like you can have a variety of skills and there's a way somehow to put them into good use. There's no excuses to let them kind of whittle away to nothing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So your daughter's name, I wanted to make sure everybody knew this. You named your daughter after your mother.
I did. Yeah. My daughter's name is Sally. And actually my husband's mom is named Sally as well.
Oh my gosh.
So both grandmas. She's named after both grandmas. And her middle name is Grace, which I love because I feel like she's our little miracle baby. Like there's the grace of God that got her to us. And then my son's name is Noah, and he was named with his birth parents. We kind of all chose that name together. And I love that they had input. We adopted him as a newborn, but I was there in the delivery room when he was born, and we still are really close to his birth parents. And they helped us pick that name. And then his middle name is Atticus, after Atticus Finch. And I was a high school English teacher, and To Kill a Mockingbird is my favorite book. And his middle name reminds me of that stage of life when I was waiting for him, was when I was teaching To Kill a Mockingbird, and just love that character and everything that he represents and the good man he is. And I hope Noah will grow up to be like Atticus.
I love it.
I love both of my kids' names, and they really are both our miracle babies. They came to us in different ways, but we're so blessed to have them. So
I'm so glad that you have them, because I know that there's always a void when you lose someone, and I'm sure that that's kind of helped fill it, to be able to fulfill the role as a mother and just really honor your own mother. So I'm sure it was really hard waiting a while for that to happen. You're like, I have already had to lose my mother. Why is this taking so long to have babies? But the reward seems very, very sweet. I mean, obviously, it is very sweet.
Yes, it is. And it is very sweet to be able to call her my mother's name, and have that reminder every single day of getting to use her name.
Yeah,
so
that's really, really sweet. I love that. Well, I think you're wonderful, and I'm so, so glad that you've come on here and shared about your mother. I feel like her spirit's been around, and I think she'd be very, very proud of the mother that you are and the things that you're doing in your life to inspire other mothers. And I really, really appreciate you coming and sharing that here on this podcast so that all the moms listening can feel of her spirit and feel of your spirit and be inspired by both of you.
Well, thank you. And I did as I was sitting here thinking about the podcast before we started, I thought, what do I want to say, or what do I want to share? And one thing that I really did want to say is that I feel like my mom's story can give hope to women with any sort of chronic health problems. And the older that I get, the more I realize how many women have chronic health problems.
That's true.
So there's so many people who struggle with these health issues, or even just really, really hard pregnancies, and that they can feel this guilt that on top of what they're dealing with physically, they also have this emotional burden of, I'm not the mother that I want to be because of my physical limitations. Mm-hmm. And I just really wanted to encourage anybody listening who may be in that circumstance that you can be an amazing mother just by being you and being the best you can be that day. And maybe you can't get out of bed that day. And there were lots of days when my mom couldn't get out of bed. But she was an amazing mom because she loved us, and we knew that. So even though she couldn't do all the extra stuff, she showed us her love. I remember days when we just snuggled in bed with her and she would read us books, or even just listen to audiobooks if she couldn't even read us books, if she didn't even have the energy for that, or watch movies. I remember visiting her in the hospital, and we'd play board games in her bed with her. She was just present. She was really present with us because she had to be, like I said, her energy was limited. And so she was really present with us, and what a blessing it was. And So I just really want to encourage any mothers that you are enough for your kids, no matter what you're facing, and they are going to remember the best of you if you simply just love them and listen to them and talk to them and explain what's going on with your illness. They'll understand and they'll help you, and they will always remember you as a marvelous mom. I promise. I know that because that's how my sisters and I remember my mom in spite of everything that she went through.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I was going to ask what made your mother a marvelous mom, and you totally answered that before I even had to ask, and that was a beautiful answer.
Yeah, and she wasn't perfect. I feel like when I talk about her, sometimes it sounds like she's like this too good to be true, sort of Pollyanna, romanticized. I mean, she had her hard days. I remember times when she yelled. I remember, all that. She was just a normal woman, but man, she was marvelous too. She did an awesome job. And so really just doing your best every day. I feel like that's what I learned from my mom. And that's going to be different every day. Your best is different every day. So just get through the day, love those kids, get them in bed, and sigh relief. I just feel like that's what my mom would say to me is like, you're doing it. Just get through the day. You're doing a good job. That's just very much the type of person she was. And so that would be my final words for anyone listening.
That's awesome. So I feel like you kind of summed that up for yourself too. But if you could sum it up in one phrase for yourself, what makes you a marvelous mom?
I would say that. I would say that the fact that I just try again every day.
I love it.
And I really do try my best every day, even though some days that's not pretty. I'm trying my best that day, and that makes me a marvelous mom. So
I love it. Yeah. You've definitely shown us that in everything that you've said, and it's been such a joy to talk to you. It really has. It's been the perfect ending to my day.
Great. Good.
You are truly marvelous.
Good.
Thank you. You're so welcome. And to the rest of you guys listening, have a wonderful day, and we will see you on the next episode. Are you interested in the idea of starting your own podcast? I can tell you exactly how to do it step by step in 7 days. That's right, 7 days to a podcast. Go check it out right now at passiveimpact.com to get started on your very own podcast.